Wait! Before you rush to the comments to tell me that I'm wrong, bear with me. I'll explain exactly what I mean by the title. So please watch the video before you rip me apart. A lot of what I'm going to talk about is my personal opinion, so you are free to share your own thoughts in the comments, but please be respectful to others who don't share your views. Let's start this video with a comparison. This is a modern Super Mario World Kaizo hack called Invictus, a very fast-paced game where every element is carefully placed. Despite the crazy speed and reflexes it demands, the moves required to progress are pretty clear if you're familiar with the Mario World controls and the typical Kaizo design language. A successful run of the level feels perfectly choreographed. The hack also looks very clean, even though it only uses vanilla assets for most of the levels. And not only do all stages in this hack have a comparable level of quality, there are tons and tons of high quality Mario World Kaizo hacks out there. But of course it took the community a long time to reach this point. At the beginning, there was only original Kaizo Mario, a hack filled with mantra spam and of course lots of invisible coin blocks. And don't forget the Kaizo traps that kill you after the goal. The point of the hack wasn't to make the player feel awesome, but to be as unfair as possible, which of course can be terribly frustrating. Because one false step sends you back to the beginning. Unless you use save states, of course. So in short, Mario World Kaizo hacks went from this to this. So now we compare that to Super Mario 64 Extreme Hacks. I know, many people call them Kaizo too, but it makes it easier to differentiate between Mario World and SM64. So, as you probably know, the world of SM64 Extreme Hacks emerged at the end of 2012 with the release of Mario 74 Extreme Edition, followed by Star Revenge Night of Doom the next year, and Treasure World a couple of years later. What was invisible blocks and mantra spam for Mario World was long wall kick sections and quicksand spam for SM64, combined with few low contrast textures. The one thing is even more common. Most missions are seemingly endless parkours, consisting of random platforms and featuring random enemies. Let's jump to the present day. Half a decade has passed since Treasure World. So what sets the current hacks apart from the older ones? Well, some look a bit nicer. King Boo's Revenge X has some areas that are a bit more pleasant to the eye, though it can't be said for every level. And there are a few new ideas here and there, so credit where credit is due. But if we really analyze the gameplay that virtually all extreme hacks share, that is present in most missions, it is still endless parkours consisting of random platforms featuring random enemies. And that is what I mean with the title. This is where extreme hacks haven't really progressed at all. You don't look at a platform section or enemy and think, yes, that really adds to the level. Most stuff just exists to make a mission longer. And I know there are a few great mini-hacks which I'll mention later, but the focus is on the big guys. Why can't we come closer to a point where level feels well choreographed like in Mario World? I believe that the issue is something very fundamental. I'm not going to talk about specific gameplay elements. This video isn't about giving design tips. I already made a video about that, link is in the description. Now is the time for PowerPoint power. Here's what we will figure out in this video. First, uncover the main issue, the roadblock. Then we will go backwards from there to reach the root cause of the problem. Ready? Here we go. How to improve. Yes, when I said fundamental, I meant absolutely fundamental. So let's see how a single hacker can improve his hacking skills. The development starts, and that shouldn't come as a surprise, with the first hack. Without prior experience, the freshly baked hacker gets his or her ideas from two sources. other hacks that already exist. They are probably the reason why that person began the first hack anyways. And wild experimentation. Just trying out whatever comes to mind. And that will already show a ton of pitfalls. The first hack is probably where you'll learn the most. Once you are done, you release the hack for the internet to feast on. The next part is crucial. You get feedback, you watch people play. Ideally, they will tell you which parts they like and what issues need to be overcome. Even better are suggestions on how to alter sections to make them better. Based on the feedback, you can optimize these elements for your next hack. But unless you just want to fix your existing hack, you also need new ideas for the next one. These two parts make up what I call the improvement machine. It's half iteration and half creativity. The new elements will then be iterated on in the next cycle. So, if everything works out, you can make a new, better hack. Of course, looking at what others do is still valuable. And now the cycle repeats. But you're probably aware that this isn't happening on its own. It needs to be fueled by motivation, which you build up from encouragement and positive feedback. Great, that's how a single hacker improves over time. Now we put all of those hackers together to see how the community as a whole improves. That's what we were after in the first place. I separate the community into two main categories, though it's not that black and white, of course. It's just easier to visualize this way. This is the previous slide in a more condensed way used for both categories. The top half is very important. It's usually just a few people who move the community or industry forward. They lead the way past the current boundaries. For example, if we look at more casual SM64 hacks, we had Frauber, Skellex, Brodude, and of course Case, just to name a few, who all had or still have a big impact on the scene. They bring completely new ideas, as well as a certain level of quality. And then the engine goes into the next gear. Those new hacks inspire novice hackers. The top hackers basically drag the rest of the community forward. And with some time, the less experienced hackers become top hackers themselves, and the whole system gets faster and faster. That's the theory. Now we need to look where this process fails in the Extreme Hack community. It can be the game itself. As mentioned before, there are fantastic mini-hacks that show what Extreme Hacks could become. My two examples are Case's dramatic tick-tock clock, which teaches mechanics in a clever way and where every object has purpose, just like in the SMW Kaizo hacks. And secondly, Extreme Island by Dan Gameplay TV, which turns the custom objects up to 11 and combines it with fantastic visuals. The potential is there, but why isn't any big hack coming anywhere close to that? Let's go back to this slide. I will now mark all pieces that do not work in the SM64 Extreme Hack community. Well, crap. Looks like the whole system's just a pile of rubble. Where exactly does it all break down though? It appears to be right when a hack releases. Some of you probably know what's coming next. Whenever a new large-scale SM64 Extreme Hack releases and the hacker is eagerly waiting for players to check it out after months of work, what do they encounter first? Pure vitriol. Hate even. The very loud and negative minority always seems to be the first to strike. And they don't hold back. They will quickly shout that the hack is trash. If there are 1 or 2 stars they don't like, the whole hack is immediately garbage. Usually no word about what's good or genuine suggestions how to do things better, or just any acknowledgement that this was a lot of work that can be played for free. Somehow this minority is always first. The calmer voices, especially the positive ones, take some time to play the hack and then state their opinion afterwards. And the biggest chunk of people are the invisible ones, those who like the hack but don't publicly say so. Now we'll go through this broken cycle once again and look at how this initial bomb causes each set to crumble. As I already said, the first thing a hacker sees after releasing an Extreme Hack is usually trash talk. The disappointed creator then can't tell which parts of the game are actually fine and what exactly needs to be changed or dropped, cause everything sucks apparently. So there's no way to properly optimize. The hacker may even do the opposite and stick with the exact same ideas, completely ignoring all those loud cries, and you can't really blame them under these circumstances. If all you get is negativity, you might as well just do what you yourself consider fun. But even if you try to appease these players, you probably won't try new things, as those are most likely getting the most hate. No, you'll copy some of the things that these people seem to like in earlier hacks. That's much safer. And it also prevents progress. Though one could argue that it doesn't really matter at this point, as the new hack isn't going to happen anyway. How could it, without the motivation that has just been shattered? Sooner or later that hacker will just quit. And that's exactly what we are seeing in the community. This top row, which is the key component, simply doesn't exist. No top hacker wants to engage in such a toxic environment. Bro dude tried it and was driven away. Case isn't going further than a one-level hack cause he knows it's not worth to put a lot of work into an extreme hack at this time. And honestly, I don't know if I want to make another hack either. So there you have it, the problem. It's the toxicity. You can't blame the hackers when there is no environment that allows growth. But how did we end up in this situation? It wasn't always like this, so something must have changed over time. Let's look for clues. This is a rough timeline of SM64 Extreme Hacks. We have the first three major hacks: Super Mario 74 Extreme Edition, Sour Range 2 Night of Doom, and Super Mario Treasure World. Tiny Torture isn't relevant in this graph, I just wanted to have a point for the current year. I can't really tell at which point most people joined this scene, but I believe there's a really large chunk that hasn't been around in these early years. So let old Luke tell you, young folk, a little bit about the good old days. From what I remember, it was pretty peaceful actually. Those who really wanted to beat the hacks struggled through, those who wanted to give it a try quit after a couple of stars when they reached the limit, but were still kinda proud of what they got. I'll talk more about that in a minute. What is clear is that attitudes have changed. I don't know when it started to get toxic, since, I was absent for years, but I'm convinced it didn't happen overnight. So what exactly changed? Most importantly, expectations. Expectations of what an extreme hack should and shouldn't be, and how to play it. And this is where I show you what I think is the root cause of the issue. Actually, I think it's two reasons. If we look at the rate of progress of casual hacks in this time period, all those star revengers, hacks like Super Mario 64 Land and another Mario Adventure, show what is possible. And those small hacks I mentioned earlier hint at the possibility that extreme hacks can be just as good. So it makes sense to have high expectations. But, and this is a big but, who is supposed to make them? Those who could make such hacks won't dare to try, and those who make extreme hacks aren't given the chance to ever reach this high bar. At this point, the expectations are impossible to meet. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy of disappointment. Furthermore, extreme hacks need a very different kind of polish. Remember what I said about Mario World Kaiser hacks? How fine-tuned every bit needs to be to work together like a well-oiled machine? In that game, you only need to focus on 2 dimensions, so the player can always see the important elements. Then there's a grid that further simplifies things. And lastly, it is well known how many tiles Mario can jump high and far. Now try to convert that to 3D, where you have to control a camera, geometry can be changed by millimeters, and Mario's jumping physics depend on his speed. Do you see how hard that is to fine-tune? The community hasn't found best practices for these issues yet. Right now, it's still trial and error. Hackers need more intuition here, but they won't develop that intuition when they're immediately driven away by hate. Some players are already getting super mad when 1 or 2 stars are too hard for them. They go crazy when the difficulty curve isn't perfect, as if that's easy to achieve. That is one root cause done. On to the other one. This is a moment where I need to talk about how extreme hacks were played back when they were new. If you went on YouTube in 2013 and looked for videos about 74E or Night of Doom, the most prominent kind of video you would find weren't save stateless stars, but let's plays. Let's plays of players who don't play at a superhuman level, who struggled through each star with tons of save states, because nobody really expected these hacks to be playable without them, with the exception of like 1 or 2 people. People expected to be kicked in the butt constantly, and that's what these hacks were made for. Crawling forward, inch by inch, where every star feels like an accomplishment. Over time, the most dedicated players figured out strats for every star and practiced like crazy until stuff like Sphere didn't feel as hard anymore. And at some point, let's plays of extreme hacks became a rarity, and videos of successful runs without save states became more common. New players who entered the scene years later, for the most part, only find these kinds of videos for hacks. These videos made by the absolute top players. So they think that's the way to play these hacks. Save states are cheating. It has to be done without them, and it has to be 100%, and it has to be all stars in order. Except it doesn't. None of that. That's not what extreme hacks are made for. You see, these top players are a niche within the niche. The point of an extreme hack is to exceed the player's capabilities, where they have to look at all places to scratch together the stars they can manage and barely reach the credits, if at all. If you start an extreme hack and expect to play through it in a straight line without big bumps in the wheel until you have 100%, then you don't want to play an extreme hack in the first place. You want to play a hard hack, but not the Kaiser difficulty. If you actually want to play extreme hacks and aren't among the top 0.1% of players, which you most likely aren't, and your ultimate goal is a safe settlers playthrough, the following is the kind of playstyle you should technically be fine with. Step 1. Play through missions with save states. Locate difficult sections and discover strats and setups for them. Step 2. Practice these hard sections with save states. Step 3. Try getting the star without save states. Many people get mad if they can't immediately start with step 3. With the current quality of extreme hacks, it is absurd to believe that every mission is easily readable and free of bugs. There will always be sections that require experimentation and figuring out before save settlers attempts make sense. You will have a bad time if you insist on playing these stars without save states before you know the best way to do it. It's like a puzzle you have to solve first, and the higher the quality of a hack, the smaller this puzzle element becomes. But hackers haven't really figured out how to make extreme hacks more readable and a smoother experience. So be more patient, more constructive instead of destructive, and more encouraging. Oh, and by the way, the players don't get to decide how hard a hack is supposed to be. The hacker does. A bumpy difficulty curve can be critiqued, but if an extreme hack is too hard for you overall and you refuse to use save states, then you aren't honest with yourself. I know it sucks to hear this, but we as players sometimes just aren't good enough yet. Extreme hacks are too hard at first by design. They have to be overcome, not run through. That's the point. Because this way you really feel awesome if you pull it off. Before we come to the conclusion, I want to share some thoughts about my personal experiences with Tiny Torture. Before I started working on the hack, when observing the ROM hacks Discord, I noticed 2 things. 1, people were frequently talking about 74E, and despite its many flaws, it was mostly positive. And secondly, people suggested 74E as an entry point extreme hack. Based on that, I made 2 assumptions. A. People would like to play something similar to 74E, that is a bit easier, has new ideas, and doesn't have some of the issues like required firsties, constant camera issues, or reclimbs and repetition from Sphere. And B. If it's a bit easier than EE, has short missions, a lot of explanations, then people would surely recommend it even more as an entry point hack. Turns out, both assumptions were wrong, at least if I judge by that loud minority. It seems that Extreme Edition is only liked due to nostalgia, reputation, and because there are tons of strats for each mission, so it is basically already figured out. It feels easier that way. But if it had been released today instead of back then, and ignoring camera issues and stuff, these same people would hate it just as fiercely as they do the other new hacks. Personally, I consider LTT to be a light Kaizo hack, the hardcore version that is. LTT Lite isn't an extreme hack at all in my opinion. That one was specifically designed to have a million safety nets and remove anything that could potentially hurt the volatile feelings of these angry folks. If those players were expecting something like the light version when I first announced LTT, then they never actually wanted to play an extreme hack in the first place. They just wanted a hard hack. Okay, the rant is over, the Steam has been released. Now let's wrap things up and summarize everything. The main problem is that a loud minority that is always first to respond to new hacks immediately trashes them and thus drives hackers away, so they can possibly improve. These people need to change their attitude. Don't expect perfect difficulty balancing. Don't expect a certain difficulty you want to play, but the hack may not have. Don't immediately call new ideas broken or trash. Practice them with save states or skip them. And instead of trash talk, make suggestions how the idea could work. Don't call the whole hack trash because of a few sections you dislike. Point out the parts you do like. Be encouraging to the creator. Respect the amount of time and effort that went into the hack. If you aren't having fun, don't play without save states or don't get the stars in order or don't get 100%. There's no point in completing a hack you don't like. It only makes you angrier, so don't be so stubborn. Maybe then we will reach a point where extreme hacks manage to reach these high expectations. And one final thing. I have been told that some hackers have been personally attacked and called really ugly things. Trash talk about a hack is bad. Trash talk about a person is unacceptable. That shit has to stop. If you attack hackers personally, you don't deserve any of the hacks. Man, what a negative, ugly topic. Making this video wasn't fun at all. I really had to force myself. But now it's off my chest. Maybe some will listen, and if not, well, then extreme hacks won't get any better, I guess.